Picture this. It's a Saturday morning. There's a man standing in a dimly lit garage, staring at a lawnmower, a washing machine, or a car engine that stopped working 3 weeks ago. A brand new replacement is sitting on a shelf at a big box store just a 15-minute drive away. Everyone in the house has quietly suggested they just buy a new one and be done with it. He hears them, but he is not buying a new one. His hands are covered in oil, his knuckles are scraped, and he spent his only day off taking this machine down to its absolute core. From the outside, this looks like pure stubbornness. A guy who just refuses to admit defeat to save a few bucks. But if you know this man, or if you are this man, you know it has nothing to do with the money. What you're watching isn't a repair job. In a world engineered to make everything disposable, where corporations design products specifically to fail just to force your credit card out of your wallet again, this man is doing something dangerous. He is taking his agency back. To understand the psychology of people who fix things instead of replacing them, we have to look past the tools and the grease. Because underneath that competence is a deep, unwritten code about what is actually worth saving in a disposable world. We live in an era defined by a very specific, almost invisible kind of fragility. Think about the modern man for a second. If the Wi-Fi drops, production halts. If a pipe under the kitchen sink springs a leak, panic sets in. The immediate reflex, the muscle memory of the 21st century, is to pull out a smartphone, swipe a screen, and pay a stranger to make the problem go away. We have engineered a society where convenience is worshipped as the ultimate luxury. But convenience is a double-edged sword, and its dark side is absolute dependency. Every time you tap a screen to solve a basic mechanical failure in your own home, you are silently admitting that you do not understand the environment you live in. You are outsourcing your own survival. But then, there is the other guy, the outlier. The man who looks at that same leaking pipe, puts down his phone, and rolls up his sleeves. He doesn't feel panic. He feels a quiet, calculating focus. To the modern observer, this guy seems like a relic. Why spend 4 hours on a Saturday afternoon covered in grime, fighting with a rusted bolt, when a professional could fix it in 20 minutes? The people who ask that question completely misunderstand the transaction taking place. They see a man trying to save 50 bucks. But what is actually happening is a psychological rejection of modern helplessness. The trap of convenience is that it slowly erodes your sense of agency. When you replace instead of repair, when you call an expert for every minor inconvenience, you become a passive passenger in your own life. You are entirely reliant on a complex web of supply chains and service industries that you have zero control over. The man who fixes things is operating on a completely different psychological wavelength. He refuses to be helpless. For him, opening up a broken machine is about demystifying the world. It is the realization that this appliance, this engine, this supposedly complex box of wires, was built by human hands, which means it can be understood by human minds. When he figures out why it stopped working, and more importantly, when he makes it work again, he is reclaiming a piece of his independence. In a culture that trains us from birth to be compliant consumers, the simple act of repairing a broken washing machine is a declaration of sovereignty. He is not just fixing the machine, he is actively refusing to be broken by a system that desperately wants him dependent. Let's take a hard look at the anatomy of this scam. If you go back to the 1950s or the 1960s, the world was fundamentally different. Appliances were built like military hardware. A refrigerator or a washing machine from that era was an investment meant to outlive the person who bought it. The generation that designed those machines had survived the Great Depression and fought in a global war. They understood scarcity. They valued resilience, durability, and the sheer grit required to keep things running. But at some point, the boardroom executives realized a terrifying truth about indestructible products. Durability is the ultimate enemy of profit. If a company sells you a vacuum cleaner that lasts 50 years, they lose you as a customer for half a century. So, they change the blueprint. This is where the concept of planned obsolescence transitioned from a dark corporate secret into the standard operating procedure of the global economy. Engineers were no longer tasked with making things better. They were literally paid to calculate the exact moment a plastic gear should snap or a motherboard should fry, usually just a few weeks after the warranty expires. But the actual hardware was only half the trap. The real masterpiece of this corporate engineering was the psychological conditioning of the public. Through decades of relentless advertising and cultural programming, corporations managed to flip human values completely upside down. They created a society where holding on to an older, repaired item was suddenly framed as a subtle sign of financial failure. They sold the illusion that buying the newest, shiniest model was the ultimate badge of status and success. They convinced millions of people that knowing how to wield a screwdriver or a wrench was somehow beneath them, a task meant only for the lower classes. And this is exactly where the man in the garage becomes a massive problem for the system. When he refuses to throw away that broken lawnmower, he is not just saving a few dollars, he is actively rejecting the psychological programming of the last 60 years. He sees the engineered failure for what it is, a tax on the incompetent, and he refuses to pay it. By choosing to repair, he is completely opting out of the artificial cycle of shame and status that keeps everyone else chained to their credit cards. He looks at a broken machine and doesn't see garbage. He sees a system trying to exploit him, and he simply says, "Not today." Let's dig deeper into the actual neurology of this behavior. Because to truly understand the man in the garage, you have to understand the environment he just escaped from. Look at the modern workforce. The vast majority of people today spend their entire week engaging in highly abstract, completely intangible labor. They sit in temperature-controlled offices, staring at glowing rectangles, moving numbers from one column to another, sending emails, and sitting in meetings discussing projects that might not even exist for another 2 years. There is no physical evidence of their effort at the end of the day. You close your laptop, and nothing in the real world has actually changed. This chronic lack of tangible results creates a quiet, creeping psychological deficit. It slowly drains what psychologists call self-efficacy, the deep-seated biological need to believe that your actions produce real, measurable outcomes in the physical world. When a man spends 40 hours a week feeling like a replaceable ghost in a massive corporate machine, his nervous system starts starving for actual agency. He needs proof that he still has an impact. He needs proof that his hands can still manipulate reality. And that is exactly what the broken machine provides. When he walks into his garage, strips down a carburetor, or dissects a washing machine pump, the abstract world disappears. The rules here are absolute. It is no longer about office politics, unread emails, or vague quarterly goals. It is just metal, electricity, logic, and his own 2 hands. When he figures out the problem, replaces the ruined part, and flips the switch, and that dead machine suddenly roars back to life, that is not just a repaired appliance. That is a massive, concentrated dose of psychological restoration. In that exact moment, he isn't just fixing a motor. He is rebuilding his own internal locus of control. He is proving to his own brain that his actions still have immediate, undeniable power. This is why this behavior always intensifies when life gets stressful. When the economy is crashing, or his career feels unstable, or the world outside seems completely out of his hands, the garage becomes his sanctuary. He cannot control the global markets. He cannot control his boss. But he can absolutely control the torque on a half-inch bolt. We have transitioned into an economy where ownership is becoming a complete illusion. Look around you. You are being pushed into a model where you rent your entire existence. You subscribe to your software. You lease your car. You pay monthly fees to heat your vehicle's seats, and you finance appliances that are deliberately designed to break before you even finish paying them off. The modern economy is a sophisticated machine built to continuously siphon your wealth through 1,000 tiny, invisible cuts. When this man refuses to throw away a malfunctioning tool, he is stepping entirely outside of that system. Every single time he successfully repairs an object, he is intercepting a transaction. He is taking the money that the system expected him to unconditionally spend and keeping it locked in his own pocket. That saved cash isn't just a budget line item. In his psychology, That money represents retained life energy. He understands something fundamental that the average consumer has completely forgotten. When you buy a replacement, you are not just spending dollars. You are trading the unrecoverable hours of your life that you worked to earn those dollars. By choosing to grab a wrench instead of a credit card, he is effectively hoarding his own time and his own freedom. It is a silent rebellion against the corporate shareholders who planned on his unquestioning compliance. He is operating like a modern-day survivalist, not out in the wilderness, but right inside his own suburban garage. He views the consumer market as a hostile environment, a massive entity designed to drain him, and his ability to fix things is his armor. This mindset fundamentally changes how a person moves through the world. While everyone else is trapped on an endless treadmill of buying, breaking, and replacing, he is quietly accumulating actual wealth and resilience. He is beating the house at its own game, simply by refusing to play the hand he was dealt. But there is a final layer to this psychology, and it is arguably the most important one. The mindset that compels a person to fix a broken machine rarely stops at the edges of their workbench. It bleeds into every single aspect of their existence, profoundly shaping how they view commitments, challenges, and most importantly, other people. We live in a culture that treats human relationships the exact same way it treats consumer electronics. The modern default is disposable. If a friendship gets difficult, ignore it. If a relationship hits a rough patch, walk away and find a new one. The cultural narrative constantly whispers that abandonment is a form of self-care and that anything requiring difficult maintenance is not worth your time. But the man who fixes things operates on a fundamentally different moral architecture. He applies the exact same logic to the people in his life that he applies to a shattered engine block. He understands that things break, friction happens, systems fail,